For years, most people have believed that fatty liver disease is a drinker's problem. But what if I told you the fastest growing liver condition on the planet has nothing to do with alcohol at all? Welcome to Longevity Lab. I'm Claire.
And I'm Robert. Claire, this one already sounds like it's going to change something I do every day, or maybe something I have been doing wrong for years.
I suspect it might. Today, we are talking about non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or NAFLD, and why it is one of the most important early warning signs of metabolic trouble.
Hold on. I remember my doctor mentioned the words fatty liver at my last checkup, but I honestly thought he was talking about my weekly glass of wine, or maybe the whiskey I used to drink in my 50s. I thought, well, if I cut back on alcohol, the liver will sort itself out.
That is exactly the myth we need to bust. It is true that alcohol can cause fatty liver, but non-alcoholic fatty liver disease develops without significant alcohol consumption. It is driven largely by how the body handles sugar, refined carbohydrates, and excess energy.
So the liver can get fat just from food?
Yes, and far more commonly than most people realize. A 2016 meta-analysis published in the journal Hepatology examined more than 8.5 million people across 22 countries and found that about 25% of adults worldwide have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. That is 1 in 4.
1 in 4? I thought this was a rare specialist condition. That changes how I think about it completely.
It is very common, but it is also one of the most overlooked conditions. Most people have no symptoms for years. The liver is incredibly resilient and quiet, but NAFLD is tightly linked to metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance, and it can predict future type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease.
So what exactly is happening inside the liver? I picture a fatty liver as just some grease around a piece of meat, if that makes sense. But I suspect it is more complicated.
It is a reasonable mental image. In simple terms, your liver is the body's metabolic control center. It processes nutrients from the gut, manages blood sugar, stores vitamins, makes bile, and packages fats for transport. When more energy comes in than the liver can handle, it starts storing fat droplets inside liver cells called hepatocytes.
So the fat is inside the liver cells, not just around the liver.
Exactly. Those fat droplets accumulate inside the hepatocytes. Over time, if they build up, that is steatosis, the medical term for fatty liver. In some people, this triggers inflammation, which becomes non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, or NASH. If that continues, it can lead to fibrosis, scarring, and eventually cirrhosis.
So a fatty liver is not just a cosmetic issue inside the body. It can progress to serious liver damage.
Right, but the encouraging part is that the early stages are very responsive to lifestyle change. We will get there.
And I ask a question that might sound a little silly. Does the liver actually get bigger?
Not silly at all. Yes, an affected liver can enlarge, but that is not something most people feel. Sometimes healthcare providers find elevated liver enzymes on routine blood tests like ALT and AST, and then an ultrasound shows fat accumulation, but normal enzymes do not rule it out.
So if my doctor only checks enzymes and they come back normal, I might still have fatty liver.
That is an important point. Some studies show that more than half of people with fatty liver can have normal ALT levels. The most reliable way to diagnose is imaging or another clinical assessment, which is why you should talk to your doctor if you have risk factors like high blood sugar, weight gain around the middle, high triglycerides, or low HDL.
Right, that sounds like a conversation I need to have rather than guessing.
And the good news is that the same conversation can lead to the right tests and a plan. Early detection is actually empowering because the condition is modifiable.
Let me present the common beliefs I have heard from friends over the years. 1. Only alcoholics get fatty liver. 2. If I don't feel anything, my liver is fine. 3. Fatty liver is irreversible. 4. I should do a juice cleanse to clean my liver. Are those all myths?
Those are exactly the points worth walking through. The first one we have already challenged. The second is dangerous because the early stages are silent. The third is false for most people because early liver fat responds extremely well to lifestyle. The fourth is one of the biggest wellness industry myths. Your liver does not need a juice cleanse. If anything, a high sugar juice cleanse adds more fructose to the system.
That last one is so common. People think a 3-day green juice fast is a liver reset, but they are actually giving their liver more sugar to process.
Yes, some green juices are low in sugar, but many contain fruit, honey, or agave, which can be high in fructose. The package looks healthy, but the metabolic load can be significant. Whole vegetables and whole fruit are better.
I have definitely bought a bright green detox juice thinking I was being virtuous.
You are not alone. The bright green color gives a health halo, but color is not a liver therapy.
So if I have a cabinet full of detox teas, I should probably just drink water?
This is where I have to be direct. Most commercial liver detox products have very little human evidence. Some may even contain unlisted ingredients that stress the liver. The truth is, your liver does not need external detoxification. Its job is detoxification, and it does that remarkably well when you reduce the incoming load.
So the best detox is not a product at all.
The best detox is removing the dietary patterns that overwhelm the liver and giving it the nutrients it needs to repair itself. That means fewer added sugars and refined carbs, less alcohol, more protein and fiber, regular movement, and good sleep. It does not come in a tea bag.
That saves people a lot of money and worry.
It does. There are some supplements being studied, like vitamin E, under medical supervision, but they are not first line for most people and can have risks. I would never recommend self-supplementing for liver health. Now let us talk about the mechanism, because this is where the science gets genuinely surprising. The single most counterintuitive piece is that the liver turns certain carbohydrates into fat very efficiently. This is called de novo lipogenesis, which literally means new fat creation. When you eat a lot of fructose, especially in liquid form like soda or sweetened juice, the liver has to process almost all of it because muscle and most other tissues cannot use fructose directly.
So glucose and fructose are different?
Yes. When you eat starches, most cells can use the glucose for energy. Fructose, on the other hand, is largely metabolized in the liver. If the liver's energy stores are already full, that fructose is converted into fat. It is not simply stored as fat because it has extra calories. The pathway itself pushes fat production.
So a sweet drink hits the liver almost like a direct deposit of fat building material.
That is a vivid way to put it. The liver does not send out a warning signal. It just processes the load. Over time, this contributes to insulin resistance, and the liver starts producing too much glucose and too many triglyceride-rich particles.
And that is where metabolic syndrome begins.
Exactly. The liver becomes less responsive to insulin. The pancreas pumps out more insulin to compensate. This can drive more fat storage, raise blood pressure, raise triglycerides, and lower the protective HDL cholesterol. An AFLD often appears years before a person is diagnosed with diabetes or heart disease, which is why I think of it as an early smoke detector rather than a liver-only problem.
I like that image. Instead of just scaring someone, it is telling them that the body is overloaded.
Right. The liver is sending useful information, not a punishment.
So can you walk me through the actual pathway? I learn better with a story.
Of course. Imagine your liver as a large airport luggage system. Every meal sends suitcases of energy into the terminal. The liver sorts them, sends some to the muscles, stores some as glycogen, and ships the rest out as triglycerides. But when too many bags arrive at once, especially from sweet drinks that bypass the normal queue, the workers cannot keep up. The luggage starts piling up inside the terminal. That pile is liver fat.
That makes it so clear. And the more often those large sugar loads arrive, the more the terminal gets jammed.
Exactly. The system can handle occasional busy days, but chronic overload changes the terminal itself. It becomes inflamed and less organized, which is the transition from simple fatty liver to inflammation and fibrosis.
I had no idea that was the mechanism. It makes me look at my orange juice differently. I used to drink a big glass every morning thinking it was healthy because it is fruit.
Whole fruit is a much better choice. The intact structure of the fruit slows fructose absorption. Juice removes fiber and concentrates the sugars. I am not saying never drink juice, but for liver health, whole fruit is stronger evidence.
So my morning juice might have been a bigger deal than I thought.
For many people, yes. And that is an easier change than most expect. Here is the finding that surprised me most when I first came across it. In a 2017 study published in the Journal of Clinical Investigation, researchers gave overweight adults beverages sweetened with either glucose or fructose for 10 days, while keeping total calories carefully matched. The fructose group showed a significantly greater increase in liver fat and a worsening of insulin sensitivity, even though both groups gained a similar amount of total weight.
Wait, so the calories were the same, but the fructose did more damage to the liver?
Yes, that is why I say not all calories have the same metabolic effect. The source matters. Fructose in whole fruit is less concentrated and comes with fiber, water, and chewing, so it is absorbed more slowly and is much less problematic for most people. But high fructose corn syrup, cane sugar, and ultra-processed sweeteners deliver large fast doses that bypass the normal satiety breaks.
That one study changes how I think about a so-called healthy smoothie.
Smoothies are interesting. If they include whole fruit, some fiber remains, but blending still breaks down the structure and can make it easier to consume a lot of fruit quickly. Chewing whole fruit is the best signal to your brain and liver.
I used to think a smoothie and a piece of fruit were exactly the same. I had no idea the physical form mattered.
That physical form is one of the most underappreciated variables in nutrition. A whole apple is not the same as apple juice, and blended apple falls somewhere in between.
Where are people getting the most hidden sugar without realizing it?
Sugar-sweetened beverages are the biggest single source, but there are many others. Sweetened yogurts, granola bars, breakfast cereals, barbecue sauce, ketchup, salad dressings, instant oatmeal, smoothies from shops, flavored coffee drinks, and even some whole wheat breads with added sweeteners. If you read labels, you will often find sugar in forms like high fructose corn syrup, cane sugar, fruit juice concentrate, honey, agave nectar, and rice syrup.
So even the so-called natural sweeteners still deliver fructose and glucose.
They are all caloric sweeteners. Honey and agave have a health halo, but agave can be even higher in fructose than high fructose corn syrup. That does not mean honey is poison, but it is not a free pass for liver health.
That is a big one for people who put agave in their tea because they heard it is low glycemic.
Right. Low glycemic does not always mean liver friendly. The fructose in agave can still drive liver fat production, even if it does not spike blood glucose as much. This is why we need to move beyond a single metric.
Okay, so if someone has fatty liver or is worried about it, what does the research say actually reverses it?
The most powerful lever is modest sustained weight loss. A landmark 2019 study in the Journal of Hepatology found that losing about 10% of body weight led to resolution of NASH in about 90% of participants, and even 3 to 5% loss significantly reduced liver fat. I do not say that to suggest crash dieting. The research supports a steady, sustainable approach.
So you do not have to become a marathon runner. Just losing a little bit of weight can start emptying the liver's fat.
Exactly. More importantly, what you eat matters independently of weight. Reducing added sugar, refined grains, and ultra-processed foods directly lowers the substrate for de novo lipogenesis. Prioritizing protein, fiber, healthy fats, and complex carbohydrates improves insulin sensitivity, and the Mediterranean diet has some of the strongest evidence for liver fat reduction.
Is that because of olive oil and fish? Or is it just eating fewer processed snacks?
It is the overall pattern. A randomized controlled trial published in the journal Gut found that a Mediterranean diet, even without strict calorie restriction, reduced liver fat and improved metabolic markers compared with a standard diet. But we do not need to be dogmatic. The core principles are simple: minimize liquid sugar, increase vegetables and legumes, choose whole grains, eat nuts and seeds, and make olive oil your primary added fat.
That sounds like how my grandparents ate. They did not have a name for it.
They did not need one. They had the benefit of food that was less processed and meals built around vegetables, beans, fish, and fruit.
What about exercise? Does walking actually help the liver, or is that just general advice?
Physical activity has direct evidence independent of weight loss. A 2018 systematic review in the Journal of Hepatology found that aerobic exercise, resistance training, or a combination all reduce liver fat by roughly 20 to 30% in people with NAFLD, even with only minimal weight loss. The consistency of the exercise matters more than being perfect.
So both walking and lifting weights count?
Yes. The general recommendation is 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity each week, spread across at least 5 days, plus 2 sessions of resistance training. But for liver health specifically, any movement that uses large muscle groups and makes you slightly breathless seems to help clear fat from the liver.
So if someone has not exercised in decades, they could start with 3 10-minute walks a day and build from there.
Exactly. The research suggests that sessions of at least 10 minutes can add up throughout the day. The key is avoiding prolonged sitting and giving the muscles a regular signal to pull glucose and fat out of the blood.
That is encouraging. It is not about six-pack abs. It is about showing up consistently. Where does sleep fit into all of this? I have been reading about sleep and metabolism.
Sleep is an important but often overlooked piece. Short sleep duration and poor sleep quality are associated with insulin resistance and fat accumulation. A 2020 study in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that even a few nights of sleep restriction reduced insulin sensitivity in healthy adults. For the liver, regular sleep helps coordinate the body's metabolic rhythms.
So pulling all-nighters or watching television until 1 in the morning could indirectly affect liver fat.
It can, especially over the long term. I do not want anyone to feel guilty about one bad night, but consistent sleep around 7 to 9 hours for most adults is part of the same metabolic hygiene as eating well and moving.
That is another thing I can control. I have been trying to push my bedtime earlier anyway. You mentioned fiber earlier. Why is fiber so important for the liver?
Fiber is one of the most underrated tools. Soluble fiber from oats, beans, apples, and psyllium slows glucose absorption and binds bile acids. A higher fiber intake is associated with lower liver fat and better gut-liver signaling. Most adults get less than half the recommended fiber, which is about 30 grams per day.
30 grams? I probably get about 10 on a good day.
You are a perfect example of the gap. The practical goal is to add one high-fiber food to every meal: beans in a soup, a handful of berries at breakfast, a side of greens at lunch, a serving of lentils at dinner.
That is much more concrete than eat more fiber.
And it feeds a healthier gut. The gut and liver are connected by the portal vein, a direct blood vessel from the intestines to the liver. The gut microbiome produces various metabolites that pass to the liver, and an imbalanced gut can increase intestinal permeability, sometimes called leaky gut, allowing more bacterial products to reach the liver and trigger inflammation. This is called the gut-liver axis.
So a healthy gut can actually protect the liver.
Yes, that is a growing area of research. The foods that feed a healthy gut, like fiber and fermented foods, may also support liver health through this pathway.
It is incredible how connected the body is. You cannot just isolate one organ. You have mentioned waist circumference a few times. Is that a better marker than body weight?
It is useful, especially for metabolic risk. For most adults, a waist circumference above about 40 inches in men or 35 inches in women is associated with increased risk. But those numbers can vary by ethnicity and body type, so guidelines have different cutoffs. The simplest way is to notice if your waist measurement is increasing, even if your scale weight has not changed.
So my belt is a health tool.
Your belt can tell you a lot. When abdominal fat increases, it is often a sign of increasing visceral fat around the liver and other organs. That visceral fat is more metabolically active and more harmful than fat under the skin.
I have also heard about waist to height ratio. Is that simpler?
Yes, some researchers suggest your waist circumference should be less than half your height. For example, if you are 5'8", which is about 68 inches, half is 34 inches. If your waist is above that, it is a signal to pay attention.
That is a simple rule people can use at home with a tape measure.
Exactly. It is not diagnostic by itself, but it is a useful screening tool.
Could you walk me through what a doctor might check if someone has risk factors?
They might check fasting glucose or hemoglobin A1C, a lipid panel, liver enzymes, and sometimes insulin levels. If there is concern, they might order an abdominal ultrasound to look for fat in the liver. In some settings, they might use a special scan called fibroscan, which measures liver stiffness as a proxy for scarring.
Fibroscan? I have never heard of that.
It is a non-invasive test that is becoming more available. It uses sound waves to estimate how stiff the liver is. Less stiffness means less fibrosis. It takes just a few minutes and does not hurt.
So people do not need a liver biopsy right away?
Not usually. Biopsy is more for uncertain cases or advanced disease. For most people, a combination of blood tests and imaging is enough to identify fatty liver and monitor changes over time.
That makes it feel less intimidating. What about protein? Some older adults are afraid of eating too much protein for their liver. Is that a legitimate concern?
For someone with existing advanced liver disease, protein intake may need to be adjusted under medical guidance. But for common NAFLD, adequate protein is generally beneficial because it supports muscle mass, satiety, and metabolic rate. Research has not found that normal dietary protein harms the liver.
So the old idea that high-protein foods tax the liver is not really supported for healthy people or early NAFLD.
Correct, with the caveat that very high intakes from supplements are not the same as food. Whole food protein is a different story, and anyone with advanced cirrhosis should absolutely follow their specialist's advice.
I am glad you made that distinction. I have been trying to eat more fish and beans, and I did not want to harm my liver.
Fish and beans are excellent choices. They provide protein without the excess saturated fat and refined carbohydrate load that often comes with heavily processed meals. Before we move on, if today's episode is making you rethink your liver health, make sure to subscribe to Longevity Lab. We cover this kind of science every single day, with no hype and no supplements for sale.
Yes, and clicking that subscribe button helps us reach more people who are confused by all the wellness noise.
Now, let us look at a research case study because it makes the dietary quality point very real.
I love the real-world studies. They make the science feel less abstract.
The central trial from Israel is a great example. In that trial, adults with fatty liver were assigned to either a Mediterranean low carbohydrate diet or a low fat diet, with both groups told not to go hungry. The Mediterranean low carb group lost more liver fat even after adjusting for weight loss. The researchers concluded that the quality of the diet, especially reducing high glycemic carbohydrates and increasing healthy fats, had a specific effect on liver fat beyond just calorie reduction.
So two people could lose the same amount of weight, but the one who changed what they ate would have a healthier liver.
That is exactly the pattern emerging in the literature. It is not only about the number on the scale, the liver is sensitive to where the energy comes from and how quickly it arrives.
I think that is the part most people miss. They assume as long as the calorie count is right, the liver will be fine.
And that is the myth we want to retire. The source and speed of the food matters, especially for metabolic organs.
I have a friend who does intermittent fasting and says it fixed his liver numbers. Is there research on that?
There is emerging research, and it is promising but not yet definitive. A 2021 trial in hepatology communications compared time-restricted eating with standard calorie restriction in people with NAFLD and found both reduced liver fat when calories were matched. The key may be that time-restricted eating helps some people reduce late-night snacking and total energy intake. It is a tool, not a magic cure.
So if it helps someone avoid a bowl of ice cream at midnight, it is doing its job.
That is a nice way to put it. The evidence for a specific fasting window is still developing, but the principle of not constantly grazing throughout the day gives the liver a break from incoming energy.
I have always been a late night snacker. That might be my next small change.
If you make one change, eliminating late-night ultra-processed snacks is a high-impact one. Your liver will appreciate the overnight fast.
Now, what about the person who also drinks a few glasses of wine per week? Does the alcohol plus sugar make it worse?
Yes, alcohol adds another metabolic burden. Although NAFLD is defined by not being caused primarily by alcohol, the combination of even modest alcohol and metabolic syndrome may worsen liver outcomes. The safest approach for someone with fatty liver is generally to minimize alcohol or avoid it, but again, this should be discussed with a doctor.
So I should not just switch from soda to beer and call it progress.
Exactly. If the liver is already overloaded, alcohol is not a harmless swap.
Good to know. I will keep the occasional wine, but I will not fool myself that it is liver therapy.
On the flip side, unsweetened coffee has observational evidence linking it to less liver fibrosis. But it should be unsweetened. Adding sugar or syrups may undo the benefit.
So my black coffee habit is okay. That is a relief.
Yes, unsweetened coffee can fit into a liver-friendly pattern, and if you enjoy tea, unsweetened tea is also fine.
What about artificially sweetened drinks? I have friends who switched from regular soda to diet soda, thinking that fixes the liver issue.
The evidence is mixed. Some observational studies have linked heavy consumption of artificially sweetened beverages with worse metabolic outcomes, but clinical trials tend to show that replacing sugar-sweetened beverages with water or unsweetened drinks is more consistently beneficial than switching to diet soda. If a person uses a diet drink to wean off sugar, that may be a step. Water, sparkling water, and unsweetened coffee or tea are the strongest choices.
So the target is not to find a sugar-free sweet treat, but to change the taste expectation.
Exactly. Over time, your taste buds adapt and you start to prefer less sweetness. That lowers the drive for highly processed foods.
Could you give me a simple one-day example of a liver-friendly eating pattern? Not a rigid menu, just a template.
Sure. For breakfast, think of unsweetened Greek yogurt or eggs with a handful of berries and a slice of whole grain toast. For lunch, a large mixed salad with chickpeas, cucumbers, tomatoes, olive oil, and a piece of fish or chicken. For dinner, roasted vegetables, lentils, or salmon, and a modest portion of intact whole grains like quinoa or barley. Snacks could be an apple with a few almonds or carrots with hummus. Drinks would be water, sparkling water, unsweetened coffee, or tea.
That sounds completely doable. It is not a starvation diet, it is real food.
That is the point. The best pattern for fatty liver is not exotic. It is the same whole food pattern that supports heart, brain, and metabolic health.
I eat white rice a lot. Is that a problem for fatty liver?
White rice is a refined grain, and it digests quickly, which can spike blood glucose and insulin. Replacing some white rice with brown rice, quinoa, barley, or beans reduces the glycemic load. But it does not mean you can never eat white rice. The overall pattern matters, and pairing it with protein and vegetables slows the glucose response.
So instead of a big bowl of white rice with a little sauce, I could have half the rice, add beans and extra vegetables, and keep the portion balanced.
That is a smart adjustment. You have shifted the meal from high glycemic to more metabolically friendly without giving up the food you love.
I can live with that. What about stress? I know it can affect the heart, but can it affect the liver?
Chronic stress can raise cortisol, which influences where the body stores fat and how it handles glucose. While stress is not a direct cause of fatty liver in the way sugar is, it can worsen metabolic patterns. Mindful practices, sleep, and social connection are supportive.
So the liver is not just about what I eat, but how I live.
Yes. The body interprets chronic stress as a signal to hold on to energy, often around the middle, and that can make insulin resistance worse. We don't need to be perfect, but daily recovery matters.
Does genetics play a role? I have a cousin who was thin and still got fatty liver.
Yes, genetics can influence susceptibility. Some people, particularly those of Hispanic or certain Asian backgrounds, carry gene variants that increase liver fat even at lower body weight. That does not mean their situation is hopeless. It means they may need to be even more careful with sugar and carbohydrate quality.
So it is not always about being overweight.
Correct. You can have a normal body mass index and still have NAFLD. That is sometimes called lean NAFLD. The underlying metabolic pattern still matters.
That explains my cousin. It also makes me realize I should not assume I am safe just because I am not very heavy.
Right. It is about the metabolic environment, not just the scale. Some people are more sensitive to the same sugar load.
What proportion of people with diabetes actually have fatty liver?
Some studies estimate that up to 70% of people with type 2 diabetes have NAFLD. The relationship runs both ways. Insulin resistance drives liver fat, and liver fat worsens insulin resistance. This is why looking at the liver can reveal metabolic trouble even before the blood sugar crosses the diagnostic threshold.
70%? That is massive.
It is one of the most important statistics in metabolic health. The liver is often the canary in the coal mine.
How much of this comes back to ultra-processed foods?
A large part. Ultra-processed foods tend to be high in refined carbohydrates, added sugars, unhealthy fats, and low in fiber. A 2019 study in Cell Metabolism found that people consumed more calories and gained more weight on an ultra-processed diet compared with an unprocessed diet, even when meals were matched for calories and nutrients. For the liver, ultra-processed foods deliver rapid, concentrated energy without the protective matrix of whole food.
So it is not just the sugar, it is the entire package.
Yes, the food matrix, the physical structure, and the speed of digestion all matter. Whole foods slow the process down and give the liver time to manage the nutrients.
I heard that a short walk after a meal can help blood sugar. Is that useful for the liver?
Yes, a 10 to 15-minute walk after meals can meaningfully lower post-meal glucose and insulin levels. That reduces the metabolic burden on the liver at the exact moment it would otherwise be storing fat.
That is a tiny habit with a real reason behind it.
It is one of the simplest liver-friendly moves. My grandfather called it a stroll after supper, and now we have the glucose data to explain why it works.
How quickly can people expect to see improvements once they change their habits?
Improvements in liver enzymes can happen within weeks to a few months. Liver fat reduction on imaging may take longer, often 6 to 12 months, depending on how much change is made and the individual's starting point. The key is consistency, not speed.
So someone should not give up after 1 month if the scale has not moved much.
Exactly. The liver is responding to the pattern, not just the scale. Some studies show reduced liver fat even without much weight loss, especially with exercise and reduced liquid sugar. That should encourage people to keep going.
I like that. It takes the pressure off the daily weigh-in. Let me see if I have this straight. If someone hears that they have fatty liver, their first step should be to look at sugary drinks and processed carbs, not just cut out all fat.
That is exactly the shift. Low-fat diets in the 90s were accompanied by an explosion of low-fat but high-sugar products, and many people replaced fats with refined carbohydrates. That is not what the liver wants. The liver loves healthy fats in the context of a Mediterranean pattern. The villain is more about fast carbohydrates, especially liquid sugar and ultra-processed foods.
That is a big reversal. For years, I thought the liver was mainly damaged by too much fat in the diet.
And you are not alone. The language around fatty liver makes it sound like eating fat is the problem, but the liver's own fat production from excess carbohydrate is a central mechanism. The name of the disease misleads people.
So maybe we should call it sugar liver instead.
Some researchers have proposed metabolic-associated fatty liver disease to better describe the cause. The name is shifting in the scientific community, but for this conversation, the key is knowing that carbohydrate overload is a major driver.
That would have saved me decades of confusion, honestly.
Of course, if you have elevated liver enzymes, type 2 diabetes, or signs of metabolic syndrome, that is absolutely a conversation to have with your doctor before making major changes. Some conditions and medications affect liver function, and nobody should self-diagnose a silent liver condition based on a podcast.
Right. I will mention it at my next visit rather than guessing.
Good. A simple conversation can lead to the right blood tests and imaging if needed. At the end of the day, here is what I want listeners to remember. A fatty liver finding is not a reason to panic. It is an early metabolic signal. The same habits that support your heart and brain also support your liver. Cut the liquid sugar, move regularly, build meals around whole foods, and follow up with your doctor.
And from my perspective, I am going to start with the orange juice at breakfast. I used to think a big glass was a healthy choice, but after hearing about fructose and the liver, I will switch to whole fruit and water. That is my one small change this week.
That is a perfect place to start, Robert. And if you slip, just return to the pattern at the next meal. This is not about perfection. It is about giving your liver a better environment day after day.
I like that. Well, thank you, Claire. This one has genuinely changed how I see a routine blood test result.
Thanks for listening. We will be back with another myth-busting episode soon. And if today's episode helped you see fatty liver differently, please subscribe and share it with someone who has been told their liver enzymes are a little high.
Take care, everyone.